Imagine a city wrapped in eternal sunshine, where palm trees sway in the warm breeze and Hollywood dreams light up the night sky. But pull back the golden curtain and step into the grim, terrifying shadows of Los Angeles during the 1980s. A silent predator prowls the dark, unforgiving streets, leaving behind no footprints, no eyewitnesses, and no answers. For ordinary citizens trying to build a peaceful life, the fear was paralyzing. In those turbulent times, many wished they had invested in robust life insurance policies to secure their families against sudden, unthinkable tragedies, or relied on advanced property insurance to safeguard their homes from rising urban threats. Yet, no policy in the world could protect anyone from the monster walking among them. For more than 2 decades, fear gripped the community. The killer felt untouchable, laughing at the helpless detectives, believing he had completely outsmarted the entire legal system. He thought time was safely on his side. But he forgot one absolute, terrifying truth. Time never forgets a single secret. Justice can sleep for decades, hidden beneath the thick dust of cold case files. But it never truly dies. Because in the end, time will tell. Even the most deeply buried horrors are dragged screaming into the blinding light of day. Today, we dive into the chilling true story of the Grim Sleeper, a serial killer who thought he had won the game forever, until a single, discarded piece of pizza crust whispered his name from the grave. Our story begins in the sprawling, working-class neighborhoods of South Los Angeles. Throughout the 1980s, this area was plagued by a devastating crack cocaine epidemic, rising poverty rates, and systemic neglect. It was a turbulent era where the streets were volatile, and the most vulnerable members of society often slipped through the cracks of a crumbling social safety net. Amidst this chaos, a nightmare took root. Between 1985 and 1988, a series of brutal, unsolved murders sent shockwaves through the community. Young women, predominantly marginalized African American women, began turning up dead in dark alleys, abandoned garages, and trash-filled alleyways. They were dumped like discarded objects, wrapped in old carpets, or hidden beneath layers of cardboard. Behind these horrifying crimes lay a deeply disturbed and twisted psychological motive. Lonnie Franklin was not just committing random acts of violence. He was a raging misogynist and a sexual sadist who viewed marginalized women as disposable objects. In his distorted, dark mind, he harbored a profound hatred and a sense of absolute superiority. He preyed on women who struggled with addiction or lived on the fringes of society precisely because he believed society would not care, and law enforcement would not look too closely. He derived a sickening sense of power, control, and sexual gratification from hunting, dominating, and snuffing out innocent lives. The pattern of the attacks was chillingly methodical. The victims had all been shot or strangled, and many showed signs of severe physical trauma. Local media quickly caught wind of the pattern, dubbing the unknown assailant the Southside Slayer. Panic gripped the neighborhoods. Families lived in constant dread, locking their doors tightly at night, wishing they had access to modern security gadgets or professional home protection services that could deter intruders. Without proper neighborhood security systems or continuous surveillance cameras watching the dark alleys, residents felt entirely helpless. The Los Angeles Police Department launched massive investigations, interviewing hundreds of potential suspects, combing through crime scenes, and setting up special task forces. Yet, despite their best efforts, the trail went ice cold. The killer left virtually no forensic evidence behind. No clear fingerprints, no matching hair follicles, and no reliable eyewitnesses. And then, as abruptly as it had begun, the terror seemingly stopped. The murders halted around 1988. The task force was eventually scaled down. The files were tucked away into heavy metal filing cabinets, and the terror faded into the background noise of a chaotic city. People began to hope that the monster was gone, perhaps dead, imprisoned elsewhere, or moved on. They were dangerously wrong. Nearly a decade and a half later, the silence of the night was shattered once again. It was August 2003 when a young woman's body was discovered in an alleyway in South Los Angeles. The cause of death, the location, the method of disposal, and the demographic of the victim bore an uncanny, terrifying resemblance to the murders from the late 1980s. Detectives rushed to the scene, their stomachs dropping. The nightmares they thought were buried forever had clawed their way back to the surface. Over the next few years, the pattern continued. More bodies were found, spaced years apart. The killer was active again, growing bolder, slipping through police cordons like a ghost. Realizing they were dealing with a ruthless, calculated serial killer who had returned after a massive hiatus, the LAPD formed a brand new, elite task force. They gave him a chilling new moniker that would soon echo around the world, the Grim Sleeper, because he had seemingly slept for over a decade before waking up to kill again. The pressure on law enforcement was immense. Public outcry echoed through community centers and city council meetings. Families of the victims demanded answers. Why couldn't the police catch this monster? Forensic science had evolved dramatically since the 1980s. DNA profiling was now the gold standard of criminal investigations. When investigators re-examined the preserved evidence from the decades-old crime scenes, they hit a breakthrough. They managed to extract a complete, undeniable DNA profile of the killer from multiple victims. The killer's genetic footprint was locked securely inside the police database. There was just one catastrophic problem. The DNA didn't match anyone in the system. It was a ghost profile. The system had no name, no criminal record, and no family link attached to it. The Grim Sleeper was operating in plain sight, walking the streets of Los Angeles every single day, completely anonymous. The technology had given detectives a weapon, but the weapon had no target. Years bled into years. The investigation stalled yet again. The trail grew cold once more. The Grim Sleeper continued his daily life, sipping his morning coffee, interacting with neighbors, and smiling, utterly confident that science could never unmask him. By 2008, cold case investigators were desperate for a miracle. Traditional police work had hit a brick wall. That was when a groundbreaking, controversial forensic technique entered the picture: familial DNA searching. Up until this point, databases only searched for exact matches. But familial DNA technology allowed investigators to search for partial matches, relatives of the unknown suspect whose DNA might already be logged in the system due to lesser, unrelated offenses. If the killer had a son, a brother, or a father who had ever been arrested for even a minor crime, their DNA would share overlapping genetic markers. California law enforcement decided to run the Grim Sleeper's cold DNA profile through the state database using this revolutionary technique. Days of agonizing waiting turned into weeks. Finally, the laboratory computer flashed with a notification. It wasn't a 100% match, but it was a striking, undeniable partial match. The DNA shared significant genetic markers with a young man named Christopher Franklin. Detectives immediately pulled up Christopher's file. He was a young man living in Los Angeles who had a minor felony conviction on his record, which was why his DNA was in the state database. But Christopher was far too young to have been the killer who terrorized the streets in 1985. However, genetics don't lie. If Christopher was a partial match, it meant that his father, or a close male relative, was almost certainly the man the police had been hunting for over 20 years. Investigators pulled Christopher's birth certificate and family registry. The name of the father glared back at them from the official document: Lonnie David Franklin Jr. Detectives immediately initiated a deep-dive background check on Lonnie David Franklin Jr. What they discovered sent chills down their spines. Everything fit the profile with terrifying precision. Lonnie Franklin was a former LAPD garage attendant and a city sanitation worker. This explained everything. Why he knew the city inside and out, why he knew how to avoid police patrols, and how he had access to city vehicles and secluded dumping grounds. He was married, lived a completely ordinary suburban life, and worked various odd jobs around the community. To his neighbors, he was just a friendly, helpful older man who fixed lawnmowers and waved hello on sunny afternoons. Nobody, absolutely nobody, suspected that the mild-mannered mechanic living down the block was the infamous grim sleeper. Yet, knowing who he was and proving it in a court of law were two entirely different legal challenges. Detectives had a strong circumstantial case, and they had a familial DNA link, but they did not have Lonnie Franklin's actual DNA. Without a direct, irrefutable DNA match belonging to Lonnie himself, any defense attorney could tear their case apart in court. They couldn't just walk up to his house, knock on the door, and ask for a blood sample or a cheek swab. If Lonnie realized the police were onto him, he could flee, destroy evidence, or take his dark secrets to the grave. They needed a covert operation. They needed to collect his DNA without his knowledge, without a warrant, and without raising an ounce of suspicion. And that is when the detectives hatched one of the most brilliant and unconventional sting operations in the history of the LAPD. It was July 2010. Lonnie Franklin was completely unaware that the net was slowly tightening around him. He continued his daily routines, frequenting local diners, pizzerias, and fast food joints in Los Angeles. An undercover detective task force was assigned to tail him 24/7. They blended into the background, tracking his every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. One afternoon, Lonnie drove to a renowned, upscale local pizzeria famous for its rich, authentic Italian crusts, premium melted mozzarella, and savory, mouth-watering toppings. He walked inside, ordered a slice of their signature specialty pizza and a soft drink, sat down at a quiet corner booth, and leisurely enjoyed his meal. The undercover detective sitting a few tables away held his breath, watching every single move. Lonnie ate the majority of the slice, but true to human habit, he left behind a small, half-eaten crust on his paper plate. He crumpled up his napkin, left the tray on the table, and casually walked out of the restaurant, getting back into his car and driving away. The moment Lonnie's car pulled out of the parking lot, an undercover operative stepped up to the table. Acting quickly and discreetly, the detective used sterile tweezers to pick up the discarded pizza crust, carefully placing it into a clean, airtight evidence bag. They had their golden ticket. The evidence bag was rushed directly to the State Forensic Laboratory under maximum security. Geneticists immediately went to work, extracting epithelial cells left behind from Lonnie's saliva on the crust. The laboratory doors locked. Hours passed in tense, agonizing silence. And then, the results popped up on the monitor. It was a 100% exact, flawless match. The DNA extracted from the pizza crust matched the unknown profile collected from the crime scenes of the grim sleeper down to the very last genetic marker. The 25-year-old mystery was officially solved by a simple piece of discarded dough. On July 7, 2010, the hammer finally dropped. A heavily armed tactical team swarmed Lonnie David Franklin Jr.'s house in South Los Angeles. Before he even realized what was happening, the front door was breached, and cold steel handcuffs were locked firmly around his wrists. The look of absolute shock and horror on Lonnie's face said it all. For decades, he had lived with the arrogant belief that he had outsmarted the law, that his crimes were the perfect ghost story, and that he would take his secrets to his grave. He never imagined that a simple, ordinary slice of pizza would be his ultimate undoing. During the subsequent search of his home, police uncovered a horrifying treasure trove of evidence. Hundreds of photographs of women, many of them unidentified, hidden inside his garage, along with jewelry, identification cards, and personal items belonging to his victims. The trial that followed was one of the most harrowing and emotional spectacles in California's legal history. In May 2016, a jury found Lonnie David Franklin Jr. guilty of multiple counts of first-degree murder. He was subsequently sentenced to death by lethal injection, though he ultimately died of natural causes in his prison cell before the sentence could be carried out. The monster who had stolen so many innocent lives was finally silenced forever. And that, my friends, is the chilling true story of the Grim Sleeper. It proves a profound and terrifying reality about our world. A criminal can run, they can hide in plain sight, they can alter their lives, and they can laugh in the face of justice for 20, 30, or 40 years. They can believe they have committed the perfect crime. But time will tell. Time is the ultimate witness. It leaves clues where you least expect them. It preserves secrets in the most ordinary places. And sooner or later, it drags the darkest truths out into the blinding light of day. What are your thoughts on this incredible case of forensic brilliance? Did technology finally catch up to a monster just in time? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you were captivated by this deep dive into true crime, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now, ring the notification bell, and join our growing community on Time Will Tell for more dark histories, cold case breakdowns, and unbelievable real-life mysteries delivered straight to you. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, time always tells the truth. Goodbye.